Dear guests, distinguished attendees, friends. It's a privilege to come back to my hometown and speak on what I feel passionate about. And at this moment and this time, I feel passionate about two things. The first is, of course, cybersecurity. And the second is about measuring things. I'm an executive director of an agency. I lead an organization, and I'm obsessed with key performance indicators, understanding where things add value and where they don't add value. And the claim that I want to do via my speech today is that in cybersecurity, at least from the civilian side, and I know that in military you are also great at tracking how many assets do you have and how do you use them. In the civilian side, we are not so good at it. And in order for us to talk about building capacity, we need to measure cybersecurity. We need to measure cybersecurity both in terms of inputs, what do we put into in order to get cybersecurity, but also in terms of outputs, what do we get out of it. Our mission at the European Union Agency for Cybersecurity is to achieve a high common level of cybersecurity across Europe. Now, if you would ask me today, what is the common level of cybersecurity in the Union? What is the level of capacities and capabilities we across in our member states and in critical sectors have? I would not be able to answer your question. I would not be able to answer it fully and comprehensively because I don't know. And I think that's a problem. We have fragments of the picture, but not a full picture. Moreover, we do not have a picture which is substantiated by all relevant data and statistics. We have within the cybersecurity community, naturally, many debates about what we should do, what we should put into cybersecurity to achieve high level of resilience. But rarely have I heard this debate accompanied by proposals of quantitative targets or expected measurable results for those input metrics. We are obsessed with tracking threats and reporting about the number of cyber incidents, but seldom do we consistently look at how the actual cybersecurity capabilities and capacities reflect in real outcomes. I claim that partially this is still due to the outdated notion of security by obscurity, an illusion that if you don't tell, your opponents won't know. And partially due to the lack of cooperation and trust between communities and countries. Due to this, we simply don't have a comprehensive knowledge at the union level. And due to obscurity, we often build capacity blindly. However, I claim that in order to spearhead a significant jump in our resilience of critical infrastructure and entities, for erecting a wall of capabilities and capacities which would block and then stem the rampant waves of ransomware menacing our economies, we need more transparency about inputs and outputs in cybersecurity. Because of obscurity, it is also difficult to point to gaps and shortcomings in our capabilities and capacities which are not self-evident. Like, for example, the universally accepted and ever-increasing shortage of cyber skills that was mentioned, I think, in the previous panel. The figures, of course, vary from region to region, place to place, but in Europe it's indeed hovering between 300,000 and 500,000 people. It's common to say, especially among cybersecurity professionals, that cybersecurity has now evolved from being an issue for the IT department to have become a CEO and board level problem. However, what we cybersecurity professionals often fail to appreciate is that boards and CEOs talk a different language. They deal with high-level and often very intrinsic cost-benefit models which are not satisfied with obscure inputs. You give them obscurity, they deny your budget requests. The same with national treasuries and ministries of finance. If they don't understand how their investments bring value, they just don't invest. So this is my mission today, to talk about why we should be more transparent in cybersecurity, why we should measure input and output so that cybersecurity would in the future win the fight for investments at board level and in national budget negotiations. How much should we invest in cybersecurity to achieve a sufficient level of resilience and capabilities across the Union? In defense, NATO uses a minimum of 2% GDP as a target to ensure that members retain relevant and necessary capabilities. In Europe and in cybersecurity, the Network and Information Security Directive, which was the first ever piece of EU-wide legislation on cybersecurity, and which was just recently updated, and which the updated version of which will be applied in 2024 onwards, this legislative piece aims to build cybersecurity capabilities across the Union and mitigate threats to network information systems, which are used to provide essential services in key sectors. It sets a number of measures which the essential entities and critical sectors have to undertake to ensure their cybersecurity. And as such, it has been a huge drive of cybersecurity investments for these companies that fall under its scope. On an annual basis, we survey organizations of operators of essential services and digital service providers on their cybersecurity posture and the investments that they have made to be compliant with the EU cybersecurity rules. In 2022, we surveyed more than 1,000 organizations in the EU and found that the proportion of their budget dedicated to information security is around 6.7% from the IT budget of these organizations. Great. Now what? Is it sufficient? Is it pertinent to reduce risks? Well, if we look at outcomes, the number of significant incidents reported to ENISA has not significantly dropped over the past years. In any other policy domain, if your outcomes go from bad to worse, you're doing something wrong. My guesstimation is, but it's a guesstimation, it's not based on statistics that I know, is that companies have invested because the directive has demanded that they implement stuff. And stuff costs money. But they don't know what they get out of it. My take from the survey, which we run every year, is that entities see their investments as compliance costs, not as investments into ensuring their competitiveness. Because, well, we are indisposed to show the many hard data that their investments actually reduces their risks and gives them an advantage, also over their competitors. Also, one target for all critical sectors would not really work. It would be like comparing apples and pears. Not all sectors, not indeed all entities in different sectors face similar risks. In Germany, public funding for digitalization projects for hospitals comes with a criteria that 15% of the amount is spent on cybersecurity. Clearly, they judge that the risk is higher. With new legislation, the NIS2, we call it, we know that the number of sectors will increase. The estimate of entities that will fall under the scope of these new rules is unknown, but estimated to increase up to 5 to 10-fold, depending on the member states. Ensuring high level of investments might not immediately, nor definitely, ensure quality. 82% of data breaches involve a human element. Promoting good practices and inducing a behavioral change that instills a cybersecurity culture amongst employees of organizations takes time, and we continue to see a gap in where we need to be. There is a huge amount of input in relation to cyber capacity building. There are investments into cyber exercises, trainings, national cybersecurity strategies, awareness and education programs. Let me take a moment to give you a snippet of all the activities that have been undertaken in this area by my organization, ENISA. Firstly, cyber exercises aim at testing cybersecurity, business continuity, and crisis management capabilities. It improves and develops skills, builds trust amongst the players. Our Cyber Europe exercise has almost 1,000 organizations participating with an observer program that offers opportunities to our partners. We do exercises for networks that Christiane mentioned that are just now being set up. Secondly, cyber trainings. We focus on train the trainers. We collaborate closely with national authorities to adapt the training needs to reflect new threats. Thirdly, national cybersecurity strategies. They are the main vehicles and tools for member states to set strategic principles, guide investments, objectives, etc. ENISA has developed an assessment framework that helps member states to measure the maturity level of their cybersecurity capabilities. Fourth, in awareness raising, we provide the tools for organizations and individuals to recognize and mitigate cyber threats. Our awareness raising in a box is a toolkit for an organization to roll out an awareness program. Our campaigns focus on the critical sectors such as health and energy. And finally, but not least, cyber skills and education. Last year, we launched the European Cybersecurity Skills Framework as a reference point for professional skills and competencies. It sets out 12 profiles to which competence and skills are mapped. 30% of the postgraduate and master programs in cybersecurity are currently mapped to the framework, and we need this to grow further. It promotes harmonization in cybersecurity education, training, and workforce development. What the problem of all those things that we undertake is that we get very little meaningful feedback on what impact these actions have. Have they increased the capacity of the beneficiaries? Are they more resilient now? Have we increased the level playing field for all? We don't know. And this is where the update of the Network Information Security Directive comes into play. It aims to end, at least to a degree, security by obscurity. NIS2 gives us a framework to start measuring the state of cybersecurity in the European Union. It tasks the agency to assess and describe the cybersecurity posture of EU, its member states, and critical sectors by measuring a number of key aspects, including the development of cybersecurity capabilities in the public and private sectors, the general level of cybersecurity awareness and cyber hygiene, and the level of maturity of cybersecurity capabilities and resources across the Union, including those at the sector level, as well as of the extent to which member states' national cybersecurity strategies are aligned. This report will serve as a tool to incentivize and enable EU member states to raise their level of cybersecurity in a clear fashion and meet their requirements. At the same time, it can also assess the impact of public policies and the EU as a whole. The first report is to be presented to the European Parliament in the second half of 2024, when the NIS2 directive comes into force, with policy recommendations that will address the shortcomings which we hopefully then will be able to identify. In reality, of course, all of these measurements are interconnected. The way we measure one aspect will have an effect on other areas. For example, there is an interplay between the risk assessment that looks at the degree of an entity's exposure to risks and the likelihood of the occurrence of incidents. The assessment of risks affects how we can measure the compliance with baseline security measures set at the European and national level. The conformity with security measures creates a link to data accuracy to build more robust situational awareness at the EU level. The more harmonized information we have, the better we can measure. We need to make these links in order for our analysis to give an accurate view of the state of cybersecurity. To be honest, to date, quantitative and qualitative data concerning the EU cybersecurity remain dispersed and is often seen in isolation. Again, this is the reason why the cyber shield that was mentioned by Christiane is so important. If we create a network of SOCs, we also will have a better understanding and a better ability to analyze information. In conclusion, in order to achieve a high common level of cybersecurity, ENISA has been given the mandate to measure the outcome. In close cooperation with member states, we are currently defining the framework for incidents reporting and the indicators for measuring cybersecurity posture for EU, and collecting the data is a team effort. It is a joint effort for the ecosystem to give answers so the level of cybersecurity maturity can be monitored and developed. And I hope it is an effort that brings long-term benefits by giving the CEOs, the boards, the ministers of finance a better picture how their investments in raising cybersecurity capabilities will add value and bring meaningful results in reducing risks. Today, I want to call on all of you, to our partners, beneficiaries, to collaborate with us to ensure that the framework that we are now currently developing is fit for purpose and that will benefit not only us, but you and the cyber capacities and capabilities across Europe. Thank you very much.
So, ladies and gentlemen, the floor is now open for questions. Once again, please stand up, state your name and affiliation. We have a question over here.
Thank you. Thanks for a great presentation, and I'm really happy to be here. Yevgen Dreus, I'm Ukrainian national working in ST Energia. So the question is related to facing the reality. Currently, there are a couple of millions of the Ukrainians that relocated to the European Union countries. And probably some percentage of them would be the cybersecurity professionals, the IT professionals. But due to the European Union regulations, for example, in the military sector, you need to be pass the security clearance or be the European Union member, citizen. In these matters, facing the reality, would it make a difference if there would be some additional framework or a part of the framework that will allow the non-European Union citizens to actually participate in the military, for example, sector or in some critical sectors? Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Thanks. So I did mention in my speech, I think, the European Cybersecurity Skills Framework. I'm happy actually that one of the early adopters of this framework is the Ukrainian government. They are currently mapping their own educational programs against this framework. And that would allow potentially also a mutual recognition of the certification of cybersecurity professionals between Ukrainian authorities and the member state authorities. So I do hope that answers one of your questions, because I think it's, in the end of the day, education and skills is also a national competence in this sense. What we can do at the European level is to develop a framework which enables more cooperation, more cross-border use of skilled professionals. But the keys are very much at the hands of member states. And of course, when it comes to people who deal with sensitive or even classified information systems, then it's very much the member states who are in control, and I think that's how we should be. But at least we provide them an opportunity to understand whether the claims that are made oftentimes that I'm a cybersecurity professional are actually true. They have a reference framework and they can use that. But I believe that in private sector, there are loads of opportunities across Europe. If you are a cybersecurity professional from Ukraine, you are not be unemployed in Europe.
True.
Hello. My name is Jaan Priisalu, and I'm working for George Mason University. And my question is about the risk management that you introduced here. And actually, the loss part, definitely businesses know what will be their losses. But actually, this likelihood part is not a natural thing, actually, natural disaster. This is depending on the threat actor. It demands to adequately measure it. It demands actually very good intelligence. And rising the intelligence analyst takes tens of years. Creating those networks takes tens of years. Have you thought about actually to somehow consolidate those things or centralize? There, the problem is more severe than just actually cybersecurity experts.
Well, thanks for the question. Now, I would actually contest your claim that businesses know. In my humble opinion, majority of the businesses don't know what assets do they have. They don't know the vulnerabilities. The IT departments of these businesses might know, but oftentimes even they don't know. So how do they know? Well, we have good partners who might help them to find out. I think we have some of them here today. But I think it's also the question of integrating cybersecurity risk management into your overall business practices, which in my humble opinion hasn't yet been fully done. But the question, what I wanted to raise is, do we help the CEOs, do we help the boards of these companies in this game? Do they understand that if they apply these and these baseline security measures, that they will reduce their risks X, Y, Z? Can we give them the data to prove it? There are examples in member states who have tried to map their security frameworks that they give out to businesses to the analysis of incidents, near misses, notifications. And on this basis, they can say that, well, if you apply these measures, 85% of cases, you will be fine. And it will take a really advanced threat actor to bypass. Okay, there might be still zero-day vulnerabilities, et cetera, security is never absolute, but you know at least the level of the risk that you will reduce. If you apply another category of measures, it will be more costly, 95%. And if you do the gold standard, we can never say 100% in security, but we say 99.99%. Huh? So I think this is where we should go also in the European level, that our critical entities, the entities that provide critical services to the society, that they know that if they apply these measures that we sent now out via an implementing act the Commission is drawing, that they have certainty to a degree that is possible, that it takes care of these and these risks, that it reduces the risk. And I think that's something that is now missing, and that missing part is hampering investments into cybersecurity. And it has adverse effects because some companies might feel that investing into cybersecurity is more costly than paying a ransom. Cost-benefit analysis. Implementing zero trust architecture across all your assets is not only time-consuming and complex, but it's also costly. Maintaining it might also be costly. Easier to pay. So these kind of adverse effects we should be able to stop. I don't know if it was what you expected, but I just hijacked your question.
So I think we still have, there's a question there. Thank you.
Matthias Kömpel from Germany. My question is about skills, the scarce resource. We know that the NIS directives provide some kind of product passes now in order to attach information about security levels to products, processes, and services. My question is about having something similar for people. And we know that currently, while we have these wonderful skill set definitions, the certification part of it is still privatized, diverse. We have things like SANS, stuff like that. Will the ENISA be willing to foster the idea of, I would call it, open source certification based on the skill definitions they came up with?
Thanks. A good question. First of all, I go back to the issue that education is a national competence, and certifying skills is something that at the uni level is difficult to do. But the European Cybersecurity Skills Framework can be used as a framework to look how we can, for example, certify managed service providers. I think there is an important element of cooperation around the Cybersecurity Skills Framework, which we just now launched with national competent authorities. And we hope that this will bring about a kind of a situation where member states, by using the framework, essentially already harmonize to agree their understanding of what it means to be a cybersecurity professional. We also work together with private sector, with ISACA and others, so that they map their programs onto this ECSF. Skills is, I think it's a very important topic, and we should talk more about it. ENISA last year did a study, essentially a foresight study, looking at what are the 10 main threats in the next decade when it comes to cybersecurity. And threat number 8 is lack of skills. So it's not only the technology and the AI and quantum and etc. Lack of skills. So it's a real problem, and it's a complex issue that we need to look from different angles. There is not only one solution. Because it's a national competence, a lot is about how member states deal with it, how much do they invest in skills development, but also how do we value these skills. And I don't want to go much there, but I always bring this one example. Nobody complains about the lack of lawyers. So we must be doing something wrong. And I think what my aim would be, hopefully, that in a decade or so, nobody would complain about the lack of cybersecurity professionals because the market, the employees, would value them so much that everybody wants to become one. Thank you.